Rothermel. I'm going to be presenting some information to you on obesity, life expectancy, and how obesity can impact our daily lives. So without further ado, let's get it going. Alright, so we all know, over time, obesity has increased drastically. It's actually increased, it's doubled worldwide since 1980. It's a big problem in today's society, not just in the United States, but throughout the entire world. So obesity has become a big problem. It's actually the second leading cause of preventable death. Physical inactivity and obesity combined are the second leading causes of preventable death. I say preventable death, meaning that it's something that we can prevent if we want, right? So tobacco is the leading cause of preventable death. Obesity and physical inactivity is the second leading cause of preventable death, because we have the option to use tobacco. We have the option to partake in physical activity, okay? Whereas cardiovascular disease and cancer are the two leading causes of death in the United States. Those two things we have much less control over. So let's continue. All right. So how is obesity measured? Obesity is measured by something called BMI. If you're not sure what BMI is, it's body mass index. So body mass index is just a term. It's just a very simple equation. All it uses is height and weight, and it doesn't factor in anything other than height and weight. So there's some pros and cons to it, but just really quick here, BMI of more than 30 is considered obese. Okay, we have different categories. I'll get into those categories in just a second. All right, actually right here they are. Okay, so we have different categories, like I mentioned, of BMI. We have underweight, less than 18.5, healthy weight, 18.5 to 24.9. You can see the rest of the list here as well. All right, so these are our categories of BMI. If you take a look at our few body pictures here, okay, really briefly, okay, this is very generic, but you can take a look and you can see, you know, exactly just based on your body shape where you might fall into. I know these pictures might be difficult to see on the camera, but for males, underweight, healthy weight, overweight, obese, and same thing for the females. Underweight, healthy weight, overweight, and obese. So continuing on, BMI, there's a few pros and a few cons to it. Like I said, the only thing that it factors in is height and weight. That's it. Doesn't factor in age, doesn't factor in muscle mass. It factors in none of those things. So with that being said, there's definitely a few pros and there's definitely a few cons. Some of the pros that we have, pros are that it's very quick, it's very efficient. There's not a whole lot of expense or time needed to dedicate to figuring out large populations, right? The United States has millions of people that live in it. The world has billions of people. Is it billions or millions? Whatever it is. There's lots of people in the world. So if we had to have every single person do a complicated measure, it would take forever to measure everyone. So in that regard, BMI is very efficient for time-wise. Also inexpensive because we don't need equipment, right? So some of the cons to BMI, one of the biggest cons you can see by the picture, right? It doesn't factor in muscle mass. So a lot of times in class I'll ask, you know, what weighs more, 1 pound of fat or 1 pound of muscle? If you answered 1 pound of muscle, you'd be like a lot of people. But it's actually the same. They're both 1 pound, okay? So the difference is in the density, the size of what takes up, you know, what size is 1 pound of fat and what type of size is 1 pound of muscle. So our muscle is much smaller, right? This is 250 pounds, 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, and both have a BMI of 33.3, which would be considered obese. So our muscular person, oops, sorry about that. Our muscular person takes up much less space compared to our obese person, right? This person looks much smaller in general size compared to our obese person, takes up much less size. So we would say that muscle mass is more dense than fat mass. Okay, so that's a big problem because a BMI doesn't factor in muscle mass. Both of these people are considered obese, and that's a problem. But in general, most of the people walking around in the United States do not look like this. Okay, now it's great that they do. There's a few, and it's good to exercise. However, in general, BMI is a very reliable tool when you're talking about large populations. Okay, so what causes obesity? Let's switch to the other side here for a second. What causes obesity? One of the biggest factors in obesity is lifestyle. So like I mentioned, physical inactivity, your diet, all right, lack of physical activity actually, and then diet is going to go into energy imbalances, and I'm going to talk about that in just 1 second here. Genetics, there are some disorders related to genetics that could cause obesity, medical conditions as well, and then medicines. There's tons of medicines out there. The side effects are 30 seconds long in the commercials, so there's definitely a lot of medicines out there that could cause weight gain as well. But in general, over 50% of obesity is caused by lifestyle, which includes our energy imbalances and lack of physical activity. Okay, so what is an energy imbalance? Okay, energy imbalance is basically when we're taking in too many calories for what our body's burning. So really briefly, let's talk about this, how our body burns calories. We have 3 ways that our body burns calories every single day. We have resting energy expenditure, which is going to take up the most amount of calories that we burn every single day. That's what our body needs just to function. Our brain functions, our heart's beating, our lungs are breathing, right? Our digestive system is working all day long. Everything that we're doing all day long requires calories. So that takes up most of our caloric expenditure here, all right? Resting energy expenditure, 60 to 70%, 60 to 75% of our daily caloric intake is used for resting energy expenditure. Okay, we have another percent here. The second largest is physical activity, and that varies between 15 and 30%, depending on how physically active you are, if you're frequently active or frequently inactive. And then the thermic effect of food. So basically the thermic effect of food, if you're not sure, thermic effect of food means that when we eat food, it requires calories to digest that food. We process heat by digesting food. So it takes a little bit of calories here. Remember, calories is just 1 unit of heat. Okay? So really briefly, we have 2 types of fat tissue. We have visceral fat, and we have visceral and subcutaneous fat. All right? So visceral fat is what's going to be harmful. Okay? This big glob of fat here. Okay? Take a look at all this. Okay? All this around the sides. Okay? Visceral fat. Okay? Visceral fat is going to be something we don't want, something undesirable. Okay? Visceral fat with our obese population is going to cause us much more problems. Okay? Much more related to our metabolic syndrome. Okay? Metabolic syndrome is a combination of 5 different factors with our health. So if we have visceral fat here, okay, our visceral fat is much more dangerous than the subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is just a localized amount of fat right underneath the skin. Okay, so take a look at your body if you're obese, and where do you store your fat? Okay, that's also important. All right, let's take a look here. Adult obesity facts. These facts are stunning, outrageous, just mind-boggling, I guess. Okay, but it's the truth. And when you look around at the population, you see it. Okay, so we have 70% of the United States data. This is from 2013, 2014. 70% of the U.S. data, or U.S. population, is either overweight or obese. Overweight or obese. Okay, we have about 32% considered overweight, about 37% considered obese, and we have about 7%, 8% almost, considered extremely obese. Okay, so those numbers are extremely high, in my opinion, and we have to do much better as a society to bring those numbers down. All right, so who actually is obese? Who's obese? Okay, so we have different populations in the United States, right? We're the melting pot of the world. So we have non-Hispanic blacks, so your African Americans, your blacks, age-adjusted race. Okay, so about 50%, almost 50% of blacks are considered obese. Right? About 42.5% are considered obese if you're Hispanic. All right, if you're white, about 34.5%, and then our Asians are doing pretty well down here at about 12%. Okay, and then we can also break these things down by age. So if we have younger adults, right, younger adults, 20 to 39, about 32% are obese. Middle-aged Americans, 40 to 59, about 40% obese, and then we go slightly down here. Older adults, okay, greater than 60 years old, 37%. Now that's only a 3% drop-off, but and I don't have numbers to back this up, but I would assume, and based on some of the information I'll show you here in a little bit, so I guess I do have some numbers to back this up, but not specifically. Okay, so I would assume that once you get past 60, if you're obese, and based on the stuff I'll show you here in a minute, that the chances of you dying are much more likely. So if you're obese past 60, the chances of you living much longer is drastically reduced. Okay, so that's why, in my opinion, we see this number go down. All right. So I have slides. This is from 1985, 1986 I start at. Okay, and these are from the CDC, and it's a really good graphic, a really good visual graphic of how the United States has changed over time, state by state, with obese rates. So we'll start here. This is 1985, so you can take a look. All this white, look at all these white states. These white states have no data. In 1985, no one even thought to take an account of the overweight and obese populations. Okay, I guess not no one, but not everyone. Okay, more than half the United States didn't even count this data. So that's relevant just it's amazing just in and of itself. All right, but we have very few states. If you take a look, 10 to 14%. Okay, that's the highest data that we have. All right, there's a few states that are in that 10 to 14 state range, and then our other states are in this, less than 10%, and then the rest of our states don't even have data. So this is 1985. This is not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. All right, I'm going to continue on here. All right, you're going to see the numbers switch up here, 86, 85, and you'll see the graph switch. So I'll talk a little bit as you check this out. So 86, we see a few more states. 87, okay, we're starting to see a few. All right, most of the states now have data. Okay, 1990, we start to see there's still no one above 15% as an entire state in 1990. Okay, now 1991, we see our first few states go above 14%. So we're at this 15 to 19% range, 1991. Okay, continuing on, there's still a couple states that don't even track this data yet, 1992. Okay, last state there. All right, now 1994, everybody has data. But still, no one over 19%. Okay, 95, 96, 97, our first states are over 20%. Okay, this is obesity. Okay, 1998, 99, 2000. Oh, 2001, our first state. Okay, our first state over here, over 25%. Okay, 2002, we have a few more states. All right, now we have a bunch. Okay, again, take a look here. Just something to take notice of. Our southern states seem to be slightly more obese. We have our first states reaching over 30% obese. Look at all these states here. Clustered right in the same area. Over 30%. Okay, I believe 2010 is my last graphic. Okay, yes. All right, so real quick, I'm going to go through these just really one more time, just super quick here, so you can see them. Isn't this just amazing how the states have changed over time? From 1985, where we had multiple states, more than half the United States, not even tracking this data, to what we're looking at now in 2010. And granted, this is almost 10 years old. I don't even have the latest data. This is 10 years old. And we saw just how different things changed from 85 to 95, from 95 to 2005, and from 2005 to 2010. So I'd be really curious to see what this looks like in 2018. I just don't have the data. This is from the CDC. So thank you, CDC. All right. So now that we've got an idea of how obesity is measured, BMI, and how the landscape has changed with obesity over time and overweight, and specifically who is obese, broken down by ethnicity and also by age. All right, let's take a look at some of the disorders and diseases and how it's impacting our health. Okay, so like I mentioned, obesity is the second leading cause of preventable death in the U.S. All right, it's actually costing us $147 billion a year. $147 billion a year. Okay, that's out of our GDP. Okay, that's actually about 17% of our total GDP. We'll just round. About 20% of our GDP is spent on healthcare costs of chronic diseases. Okay, of which obesity is greatly impacting our chronic disease risk. So $147 billion a year in medical costs just due to obesity. Think about what we could do with all that other money. With that money, what we could do on so many other things with that money. Okay, here's some big time conditions. We're going to talk about some of these, and if you can see the graph here, just about every part of the body is affected by obesity. Okay, some of the big things: heart disease and stroke, high blood pressure, diabetes, obviously, some cancers, osteoarthritis. Okay, some of the big things: sleep apnea. All right, those are big conditions that are impacted greatly by obesity. All right, so some of the biggest causes of death in the United States. I mentioned these earlier. Heart disease. All right, number 1 cause of death in the United States. Cancer, number 2 cause of death in the United States. And take a look at all of these. Okay, diabetes, Alzheimer's, stroke. Okay, chronic lower respiratory disease. Many of these things are greatly impacted. Excuse me. Many of these things are greatly impacted by our health condition, our weight, obesity. Okay, heart disease, obviously, some cancers. Okay, stroke, chronic lower respiratory disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes. All these things are greatly impacted by our health. Okay, our weight, obesity. All right. Now I got a few facts here. Let's just go through these really quickly. All right. Chronic diseases, leading cause of death in the United States, about 117 million people. Okay, about 50% of adults in the United States had at least one chronic health condition. Okay, in 2012, about 50% of adults in the United States had at least one chronic health condition. Heart disease and cancer, we saw that on the last slide, account for almost 50% of all deaths in the United States. Arthritis, most common cause of disability. Okay? Diabetes, leading cause of kidney failure, lower limb amputations, and all new cases of blindness among adults in the United States. I think that is not including like war, okay? But in general, right? 2015, 50% of adults did not meet the recommendations for aerobic physical activity, and 79% did not meet recommendations for both aerobic and muscle strengthening activity. All right, so again, physical inactivity is causing some of these problems, many of these problems. All right, lastly here, greater than 37% of adolescents and 40% of adults said they ate fruit less than 1 time a day. Less than 1 time a day. Almost 40% of adolescents and 40% of adults said less than 1 time a day they eat fruit. Okay? While 39% of adolescents and 22% of adults said they ate vegetables less than 1 time a day. Okay, so we're not eating fruits and vegetables. We're snacking on junk food all the time, constantly. All right? A couple more did you know real quick. Let's see, what do I want to point out here? Diabetes cost us $245 billion a year in 2012. Okay, just diabetes alone. Crazy. Okay. Last couple things here. Obesity. I mentioned this earlier. All right, we'll skip that because I mentioned that earlier. But take a look at this second sentence here. Annual medical costs for people who were obese were $1,429 higher than for people with normal weight. Okay, so if you're obese, all right, you're spending more medical costs. I think that's pretty obvious by now. All right. So let's take a look here. All right. So obesity and cancer. We just talked about cardiovascular disease. All right. Cancer here. All right. Cancer is 23% of all deaths in the United States. Okay. It's going to affect many people. All right. 3 out of 4 families, 1 out of every 2 men, and 1 out of every 3 women in the United States. Okay. It's expected to be the leading cause of death by 2030. And obesity increases the rate for cancer by 50%. 50%. Okay. So again, these chronic health conditions are impacting, our obesity is impacting these chronic health conditions, which is causing most of the deaths in the United States. It's the leading causes of death. Again, cardiovascular disease and cancer and obesity is increasing the risk for cancer by 50% because of some of these things listed here. Some of the things that happen in your fat tissue. All right, take a look. Some of these, we got different types of cancer: breast cancer, prostate cancer, endometrial, lung cancer. So we got all these different types of cancers, and estimated that if we were just in shape, if we ate healthy, we participated in physical activity, we would be preventing 89,000 cases of cancer, 25,000 cases of cancer, 31,000 cases of cancer, 24,000 cases of cancer, 80,000 cases of cancer, 68,000 cases of cancer. These things, while they're maybe not totally preventable, they are definitely delayable. Okay, definitely delayable. Much better quality of life, longer into life. We need to start taking care of our health, and you got to do it now. You can't wait. The younger you are, the easier it is. Okay. So really quickly, body weight and activity status. So based on your body weight, it's percent increase in your risk of heart failure. Okay. So if you're lean and inactive, okay, meaning that you're appropriate body weight, but you're inactive, okay, you increase your rate by 19%. So that's not, I mean, 19% is a decent amount. That's a good amount, but compared to some of these other rates, okay, at least you're lean, right? But if you're lean, all you have to do is continue to be active, whereas these other people have much more things to do. They have weight to lose and need to get active, okay? So if you are obese and inactive, you increase your rate of coronary heart failure by 293%. You're increasing your rate of heart attacks, strokes, all different kinds of coronary heart failure by almost 300%. Okay, that's insane, insane. Okay, now why do I tell you all this? Okay, well, I have just a little bit more to go, and I found this study not too long ago, and I thought it would make good information to post online for people, just to see exactly what's happening, the dangers of many of our society here, our population in the United States, especially for our youth, because we know that as a youth, as a child, if you are overweight, the chances of you ever getting back to your normal weight are drastically reduced. So it's important to start with our youth and getting this fixed now. Okay, getting this fixed now. So there's a study from the NIH, National Institute of Health. Okay, they took a look at life expectancy and obesity. Okay, so they took a look at life expectancy and obesity, and they took a look at class 3, okay, class 3 or extreme obesity. Okay, and there's a dramatic reduction in life expectancy. Okay, now something important to point out that okay, they took data from 20 large studies. Okay, so this was a meta-analysis. They took all these different studies and combined them, and they took a look at all these studies. So there's 20 large studies. There's thousands of people in this. Okay, I'm going to skip this slide here. Basically, this slide here is saying that obesity used to be rare, especially in class 3 obesity used to be rare, but class 3 obesity and all obesity is on the rise. Okay, so that's what this slide here is saying. All right, so something important to point out, the study excluded, okay, it got rid of individuals who had ever smoked or had a history of certain diseases. Okay, so we evaluated the premature, well, not we, but the researchers evaluated premature risk of death overall and the risk of premature death from specific causes in more than 9,500 individuals who were class 3 obese and over 300,000 who were classified as normal weight. So we have a large, very large sample size to pull data from. Okay, we have 310,000 people. 310,000 people. That's a good amount of people to study from. All right, more than enough. So here's what they found. An excess number of deaths in class 3 obesity were mostly due to the things I just mentioned: heart disease, cancer, diabetes. All right, if you had a BMI of between 40 and 44.9, you had a 6.5 years reduced life. You had a life expectancy, your life expectancy was reduced by 6.5 years. If your BMI was 55 to 59.9, your life expectancy was reduced by 13.7 years. Okay, 13, it's over a decade. Okay, over a decade. Now I know I love life. Okay, I'm excited for life. I wake up happy. I wake up excited to get going every single day. And I want that for you too. I want that for you. Okay? But you gotta be realistic with these numbers. Okay, look at this. Again, if your BMI is between 40 and 44.9, you have a 6.5 years. 6.5 years off your life. Okay, 55 to 59.9. Your life expectancy is reduced by almost 14 years. That is just crazy. Okay? And take a look at this last sentence here. Researchers found that the number of years of life lost for class 3 obesity was equal or higher than that of current versus never cigarette smokers among normal weight participants of the same study. So the number of years lost. Okay, the number of years lost. If you're obese, it's the same as being a cigarette smoker as far as life expectancy is concerned. That's how dangerous it is. We all know how dangerous cigarettes are and tobacco. Okay? Obesity is just as dangerous. and it's just as costly in society as well. All right, so what does that mean though? Who knows what these numbers mean, right? What's a 40 to 40, basically 45 BMI, and what's a 50 to 60, 55 to 60 BMI? All right, well I got some numbers for you. Okay, so remember, here's your reduced life expectancy range. All right, so the average male in the United States, the average male is 5'10". Okay, the average female is 5'4". So I punched in some numbers. BMI calculators are all over the internet. You go to Google, you type in BMI calculator, and you can punch something in and you can get your own BMI. So a 5'10", 280-pound person has a 43 BMI. Okay, that's right in here. Okay, actually, you know what? Is that 43? Okay. 5'10", 280 pounds, 43 BMI. Okay, in that range, 6.5 years lost. All right, 5'10", 385 pounds, 55 BMI. Okay, we all know people that are in these ranges. Okay, and if you're not far off, say you're 5'10", 260. Well, you're not far off, so maybe we could say 5 years. Okay, 4 years. Okay, and that doesn't even factor into. That's off your life expectancy of just being in general health. If you were healthy, if you exercised, your life expectancy would be even longer. Okay, these are compared to normal weight individuals, not compared to healthy individuals. Okay, because we saw on the previous slide, where was it here? Lean and inactive. Okay, lean and inactive. There's not even a category here that we have for lean and active. Okay, so females. Okay, like I said, average female, 5'4" in the United States, 235 pounds, 40 BMI. 5'4", 295 pounds, 50 BMI. Okay, so these numbers. All right, if you're anywhere close to these, all right, we got to make a change, and the change starts now. You have to want to do it. Some of the biggest thing is just getting started. Okay, getting started and keeping going with it. All right, you can make a lot of progress without knowing what to do by just doing something. But if you want to make progress faster, contact me. Okay, you can reach out to me, my Facebook page, my Instagram page, my website. All those things I'll have linked in the bottom of this YouTube video. So check it out. I appreciate you guys watching and listening. Again, Andrew Rothermel, Above and Below Health and Fitness LLC. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you learned something. And if you want to make a change, I can help. Okay. Have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon.